All right, we are now starting a new unit. We're finally going to talk about the existence of God. We're not just talking about logic anymore. We're actually going to start using arguments, okay, for the existence of God. So this is where we get to the real meat of this class. So just a reminder, quick reminder, as to where we are or how this class is set up. Remember, we're taking someone down the rational path to Christian ethics. We have to find out where they are, and the whole point of this class, because I'm only with you for one semester, is to focus on just this first step, right? So, we are talking only about the existence of God. We're only getting as far as this first step. And today, we're starting the Cosmological Argument. That's what it's called, the Cosmological Argument. Okay. All I'm going to do today is introduce it. Tomorrow throughout the rest of this week, we might deal with a little bit of just a little bit more of it. And then this is going to take a couple of weeks to fully explore. First thing we should look at is this passage in Scripture. Does somebody have a Bible with them or have it on their phone? No one has a Bible on their phone? Yeah. Pull it up, please. Romans chapter 1. Do you mind reading a passage?
Romans chapter 1.
Could you read verses 16 through 23? Everybody listen.
Right. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also for the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things.
All right, thank you. Paul is talking about pagans who were worshiping creation. They were worshiping idols and so on. We see a lot of this today, maybe not in the form of idols as much, but we still see the worship of creation. And Paul is saying that they have no excuse to do this because there are certain things about God that are obvious from creation. And these are the words he uses. He says, for what can be known about God, he is plain to them and has been shown to them. How has it been shown to them? Well, he says, ever since the creation of the world, in what has been made. Okay? So, he says there are two things that you can just look at the world and know these two things about God. Which is a very interesting idea, right? Because most of what we learn about God comes in the form of the Bible, right? But what he's talking about here is something different. So there's really two kinds of revelation. Number one is what we get in the Bible. It's what's told to us about God. But number two would be what we see in the world. And that's the idea. We're talking about inductive reasoning, right? Observation. But also deductive reasoning in that we take these observations and we can come up with principles and line them up logically and come to certain conclusions. Okay? And he says those two things which are clearly seen are God's eternal power and divine nature. Your version said Godhood on the second one. Okay, these are two very important ideas, two very important concepts that we need to keep in mind, okay? Because several of the arguments we talk about are going to deal with these two things. Because notice, going back to the rational path of Christian ethics, we're not reading the Bible to people, are we? No, we're trying to get them to believe in God first, and then we move on to show them that the Bible is His Word. So these arguments we're using, they fall under this category of things that are seen in nature, these attributes of God, which we can come to the conclusion of even if we didn't have the Bible. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. The first one is all about the blue one, okay? Eternal power. The cosmological argument is all about God's eternal power, which we can see and we can know about, even if we didn't have the Bible. We can know about it just by looking at the world. Now, that's a very interesting idea. First of all, what does the word eternal mean?
No ending.
No ending? Okay.
No start.
No start, no beginning. So no beginning or end, right? That's correct. Go ahead and write it down. Eternal means existing forever without end or beginning. So a good way to visually represent this is with an arrow, a line with arrows going both ways, right? This is hard for us to wrap our minds around when we first hear about this concept. Okay, so let's think about it for a second. No beginning. Eternal means there was never a time that whatever is eternal didn't exist, right? And there will never be a time that it doesn't exist. Okay? It goes forever that way and forever this way. Paul says we can know about eternity just by looking at the world. Anybody want to maybe throw out a guess as to how we could know that by just looking at the world? Anybody guess? Can you think of how that works? All right. Let's go ahead and go through a thought experiment. Okay. I'm going to show you three conceptualizations of time. They're on your sheet. Okay. Here they are. So what's this first one?
Beginning, no end.
Yeah, it's something that has a beginning but has no end. Okay. What's the second one?
No end.
No end or beginning. That's eternity, right? Okay, what's this one?
No beginning.
No beginning, but it has an end. Okay, so here's your thought experiment. Which of these three conceptualizations of time are logically possible?
First two.
Of anything. The first two, why?
Because if something has an end, it can't have no beginning.
Why?
Because it doesn't make sense.
Okay, this is where you got to really wrap your mind around this. It can be difficult for us, okay? But you're right. The first two they are logically possible. That doesn't mean they are happening. I'm saying they're logically possible, okay? There is such a thing, or an idea as something that has a beginning but has no end. That logically lends itself to completion, okay? Same thing with eternity, no beginning or end. But this one doesn't work. It could never work. Why? Anyone want to try?
You want an example?
Sure.
Like, if a star had no beginning, eventually its end was it would be burning out, right?
Yeah.
It can't ever. It won't. You know what I mean? It wouldn't work.
Okay. So, yeah. It's hard to put into words. Let me try. Okay. Here we go. The star. Give the star as the example. If it had no beginning, and yet an end is coming, then the end would have already happened.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If you can go forever the opposite direction, if you can go forever back in time and there's no beginning, then there can't be an end, because the end would have already happened. Okay? Think of it like a car with a tank of gas. Okay? It doesn't matter how much gas is in the car. If the car has been driving forever, it's already out of gas. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So, the same is true of the universe. We cannot have a universe that has an end and no beginning. Okay? Just let that sink in. It can be difficult. Any questions about that? This is an important thing for us to wrap our minds around. Okay? The concepts of time and eternity. Okay? Let's do another thought experiment. 0 plus 0. What is 0 plus 0?
0.
0. Okay. Can it ever equal anything except 0?
No.
No. Okay, so let's say I take nothing and I add nothing to it. What do I have?
Nothing.
Nothing. And remember, when I say nothing, I don't mean air, I don't mean space, I mean literally nothing. We add to nothing, nothing. Will we ever have something? No. So this is an important concept for us to understand too. That if there was ever nothing in existence, there would be nothing in existence now. You guys with me on that? Because 0 plus 0 always equals 0. Nothing can it's hard to say. Nothing can never create anything. If something is here now, what this logically means is that if something is here now, something has always been. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we're here now. We're all able to think. We're able to interact with one another. There's no question that we exist. Okay? Even if we were, what some people like to say, we're just thoughts in something else's brain. Thoughts are still things. We're still in existence. We can still think. It goes back to the old philosopher, I think, therefore I am. Okay? We are existing now. Logically, that means something is eternal. Okay? You guys with me on that? Because there could never have been a point where there was nothing. If that was true, then there'd be nothing now. Because nothing cannot create anything. Okay.
Makes sense.
It makes sense, it's just hard to conceptualize sometimes. It's hard to put into words or to visualize even. But if we're talking about a time that there was absolutely nothing, there'd be nothing now. That's just how it works. So let's put this into a logical train of thought, okay? So go ahead and turn your papers over and write this down. Something exists today, thus something eternal has always existed. Okay? Something exists today, thus something eternal has always existed. There is no logical way around this. Okay? Now we don't know, we haven't decided, we haven't determined what that something is, right? But we do know something has to have always existed for anything to exist now. Next up. Something is eternal and doesn't wear down, thus it violates scientific laws. So if something was eternal, whatever that something is, doesn't follow the natural laws that we can observe in our world, right? Because everything wears out in our world. So this is something different that exists outside scientific laws. And then third, something violates scientific laws, thus it exists outside of the observable laws of naturalistic science. So we follow this logical train of thought. You know what we've just proven? Something beyond this material world has to exist. Or at least something beyond what we can observe, at the very least. Or maybe I'll put it this way. Something beyond what we've ever observed exists. Okay? But that's just a logical train of thought. That is not an argument yet. Okay? So we're going to take some of these concepts and we're going to put them into a deductive argument. And that's when we come up with the cosmological argument. Okay? So here it is. Stated deductively. The cosmological argument. Major premise. Everything that has a beginning has an adequate cause. Everything that has a beginning has an adequate cause. The universe had a beginning, minor premise. Therefore, the universe had an adequate cause. Alright, so notice, a lot of these thought experiments we've done so far, they haven't yet reached us to this argument, have they? They haven't proven this argument to be true yet. That's why we're going to spend a couple of weeks proving its premise, as you would do with any argument. Okay, so we're going to spend some time talking about the first major premise. We're going to talk about the minor premise more. We're going to talk about that in a bit more detail. And then, if you can prove both of these premises, does the conclusion naturally follow? In other words, is this a valid argument? Remember valid arguments, invalid arguments? Is this a valid argument? Yes. Yeah. If the first premise and the second premise are true, then the conclusion has to be true. Okay, that's what makes it valid. Okay, we're going to determine if it's sound by looking at the first two premises, right? Okay. So this is the cosmological argument. This is a very famous argument for the existence of God. It's definitely been around a long time, okay? And in fact, it was first formulated, at least that we know of, by medieval Muslim scholars, interestingly enough. And they called it the Kalam cosmological argument. I've tweaked it a little bit, and as time has gone on, the wording has been tweaked a little bit. Their original didn't have the word adequate in there, in the first premise, okay? They would just say everything that has a beginning has a cause. I've added in the word adequate. Why is that word important?
Because it doesn't follow. Because you can't. You say that so someone can't say something little cause something big.
Yeah. Okay. So the word adequate. Not only does this argument in itself bring us to, well, something had to have begun the universe. That something has to be big, right? That something has to be powerful. Because you're talking about the universe. The biggest thing we can kind of wrap our minds around, right? We can't even wrap our minds around the size of the universe. Therefore, don't tell me that the universe began by, something small, something inadequate, okay? So the word adequate helps us get closer to the theistic viewpoint, just a little bit more quickly, okay? Perhaps a little bit more accurate. So again, this argument has been tweaked over the centuries. The wording has changed. This is the wording I think suits the argument best at the moment. Okay. This means logically, we can come to the conclusion of what Paul said, that God's eternal nature is clearly seen in what has been made. In other words, we can look out at the universe. We can, first of all, know logically that for anything to exist now, something has to have always existed. That's number one. Number two, we look out at the universe and we see that the universe is not eternal. We see that it's running out of energy. It's like a car with a tank of gas, and it's a limited amount of gas, okay? And remember we talked about, if the universe is going to have an ending of energy, it means that would mean that let me rephrase. If the universe were to be running out of energy, and we can see that it is, then there has to be a beginning, right? Because if you could go forever backwards, then there'd be no energy left now. I know, our minds are being twisted into pretzels right now. Okay? But this is logically, these are the only logical conclusions you can come to. So we're going to see that this argument very adequately proves the existence of God, at least beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? Because the conclusion of this argument, really the conclusion of logic, is that one of two things has to be eternal. Either there's God outside of the universe, and he's eternal, or the universe itself is eternal. Okay, those are really the only two conclusions you can come up with, because something exists today, therefore something has to have always existed. Okay, any questions, comments on that? Again, this is just an introduction. I don't want us to break our brains yet, okay? All right. I'm going to stop the recording.